Before you decide to have a hospital birth, watch this. If you're trying to plan a true natural birth, then you need to understand that planning a hospital birth can cause you to actually have unnecessary interventions. It can undermine your confidence and sabotage your true natural birth unless you follow what I'm about to show you inside of this masterclass. Hi, my name is Carly Bonderud, and this is the Empowered Birth series where I go deep into everything that you need to know to plan and get your empowered true natural birth. And if you've been following along with this particular series, then you know that I'm going into the 20 natural birth traps. What is a natural birth trap? Well, it's exactly what it sounds like. It's a trap that you fall into that derails your natural birth. And if you go into the description of this video, you will be able to find the list of the 20 natural birth traps. You may also want to learn more about true natural birth by going to my website, empoweringmomsbirth.com/start guide, because there's a difference between natural birth as perpetuated in our birth culture and medical system and true natural birth, which is the physiological process that your body is designed to do, whether you push on the outside, prepare your body, or have any medical interventions whatsoever. In fact, a lot of things that are happening inside of a hospital environment are sabotaging true natural birth. Here at Empowering Moms, I am committed to you having an empowered birth, whether you work with me directly or not, whether you purchase any of my programs or support the Empowered Birth movement through donations. Whatever it is, information is free, and I only charge for access to me. I have 3 paths to getting the Empowered Birth method, and you are currently on the do-it-yourself path. What this means is that you can basically watch any masterclass that you like. And there's a few that I'm going to be mentioning during this video that you're probably also going to want to check out as well, because it is relevant to the topic today of natural birth trap number 7, the hospital. Because one of the things that I advise to all of my clients who want to have a true natural birth, or just a mom who's looking to have a natural birth as natural as possible, is to go to the hospital at the last possible minute. Now, I am also aware that inside of our society, we have this idea that the hospital is the safe place to have a baby and that something could go wrong if you are not in the hospital. This then reinforces fear, which causes you to feel like you need to birth in the hospital to be safe, which can delay the onset of your labor or slow your labor down until you're in the hospital. If you really want to understand this deeper, I'm going to be sharing some more resources. But first, you need to understand the difference between true natural birth and natural birth perpetuated in the medical system. True natural birth is what your body's already going to do anyway. You can liken that to organic ice cream. And natural birth as perpetuated in the medical system and our birth culture is essentially what happens when you were thinking you wanted ice cream, you went to the convenience store and you weren't looking at the label properly, and then you bring it home and then you open it up. It looks like ice cream, but if you look at the ingredients list and if you look at the label, it says frozen dessert. So there are ingredients that you can't pronounce. And you're like, I wanted organic ice cream. I don't want all this crap in my system. I wanted the real thing. And this is essentially what happens in a medicalized birth environment that is perpetuating natural birth. And this is also why you need to be careful if your plan is to go to the hospital. Now, even some of my high-risk clients have waited until the last minute to go in and have their true natural birth. In fact, Jenny herself, who is my business partner and best friend, and you can read more about her story inside of Your Empowered Birth. I also have an interview with her, but basically what she recognized is that going into the hospital too early would lead to what I'm going to be telling you in this video, the certain traps that you're going to fall into. And I'm going to share with you the exact map, because again, this is the do-it-yourself path. So if you do not currently have time to sit down for at least an hour in a deep dive masterclass and take notes, you may want to save this video for later and just download the transcript that I have added to the actual description. This transcript is basically telling you everything that's in the video. I've also highlighted the most important pieces by putting them in blue text. And then I've also added bold text for most of the overview. So you can skim this transcript. And then in addition to that, the deeper you go with empowering moms, the more treasures you'll uncover. So you're going to want to hang on to this transcript. And I also encourage you to bookmark the link to the transcript itself, because I add more things to these transcripts as we go further into the empowered birth journey and as I create more videos. So what's in the transcript right now may not be very much. However, in the future, as I build on this or I create other videos and resources, there will be more links embedded into that transcript. Think of it as a little miniature library database where the topic that you're most curious about is going to continue to build on itself so that you can continue to get the information you need. Information is free. I only charge for access to me. And the reason for that is because if you do not have all of the information to make an informed decision, then what happens is that your birth plan basically gets derailed, and then you find out years later something that you didn't know that would have made you make a different choice. And you're like, if I had known that this was the outcome and I had all of this trauma from being in this space, I never would have agreed to that hospital birth. And so I'm going to share stories with you as we go through this about how I recognized the limitations of the hospital environment and how to transcend that if you do feel that the hospital is the safest place for you. Because I am not here to tell you where to birth. Only you really know where you want to birth. And you need to do it from a place of power and knowing what you're giving up or what you're trading in order to get the experience that you want. And you need all of the facts for that. So part of the empowered birth method is that we aim for a true natural birth, and then we pull back only as much as needed. Now, Jenny herself also discovered, as I did, that you think you're going into the hospital and you're going to have this natural birth experience, and that's the default. But then you get into the system and you realize that's not the case. And there's many, many reasons why that's happening, and I can't get into all of them. If you really want to understand this, I encourage you to check out the Reset Your Mindset for Empowered Birth mini challenge, which is inside the playlist of the YouTube channel. It's also embedded into the links of this transcript. So if you hear something as I'm speaking, remember, there's probably a link that's either added now or will be added in the future. And if you have any questions or you want me to elaborate on something that I already talked about in a video, you can always reach out to me, hello@empoweringmomsbirth.com, and either myself or one of my team members will get back to you within 3 to 5 business days. If you are subscribed to our Empowered Birth Community newsletter, then you just hit reply to any one of our emails. That's your path. And then we'll get back to you within 1 to 2 business days. And if you're one of our self-study VIP students, you know that you have extra access to us with direct email support and laser coaching, and even getting into deeper connection with us to be able to help you on your empowered birth journey. And of course, if you are the high level premium coaching client, which I don't work with everyone, then you also have me on WhatsApp, as you know. So information is free. I only charge for access to me, and you deserve to have all of the facts. So remember, take some notes, because once you go through this training once or read over the transcript once, you're going to want to come back and get your aha moments. And then you go deeper with that, you integrate it, and you remember it. So this is basically the rule of three, and I'll tell you more about that later. I'm also going to tell you about the empowered birth method and how to apply this to have a more empowered hospital birth, if that is in fact the path that you want to choose. And who knows, maybe you'll change your mind. Maybe you'll suddenly realize the hospital isn't the best place for you, and you'll feel more confident to plan a home birth or have a birth center birth, or if that's not possible, maybe you might even just decide to wait until the last possible minute to go in, and it won't be scary for you anymore to do that. And hey, I'm not going to judge you. If you want a free birth, if you're looking for information for a wild pregnancy and free birth, and you're also looking at backup hospitals, then this is for you just as much as the mom who thinks that the hospital is the safest place for her. So welcome, empowered mom. You are going to have a wonderful time on this masterclass. Again, take notes, follow along, and if you are pressed for time, go and check out the transcript and see where you really want to dive back in later. But if you hear it, if you watch it, if you have multiple different ways of getting the same piece of information, that is going to help you a lot more to get your empowered birth. And when you have an empowered birth, you're an empowered mom for life, and no one can take your power from you again. Okay, so first, what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell you a story. Then I'm going to tell you about how this undermines your confidence and leads to the sabotage of your birth plan. I'm going to tell you about a few things that the hospital does that you don't need to have. I won't go too deep into that though, because many of them are natural birth traps that come up later in this series. Go check again for the list of the natural birth traps and you'll see that. And another resource that I'm going to let you know about, and I will go deeper into this about the part of the chapters that you might want to check out, is Cynthia Gabriel's book, Natural Hospital Birth. As you can see, this is such a wealth of information that I basically put Post-it notes on every single page in different colors because of just how much of a rich resource Cynthia Gabriel's book really is for having a true natural birth in a hospital setting and to have it be empowering. In fact, I also did an interview with her a little while back, and we were talking about partner support. So you can go and check out that interview, and she'll probably be on in the future as well. She is one of my connections. So after I tell you about how it undermines your confidence and how the medical system basically puts you into these traps, I'm also going to share the empowered birth method and how to get out of that. I'll share the 3 paths to empowered birth, and I'll tell you more about how to get the most out of this masterclass. Because again, I'm committed to you having an empowered birth, whether you work with me directly or not. And you know, sometimes you can't do self-study, or you only need 1 or 2 pieces because you've already got the map yourself. And, you know, maybe you are a do-it-yourselfer. Maybe it actually brings you a lot of joy to go down those rabbit holes and find the information. Hey, I'm the same way. I love to piece things together. I love to go and sift through data. Sometimes I do appreciate having a guide to help me and know where those resources are. I do get coaches. I am friends with a lot of coaches. I'm friends with people that are basically in the higher levels and know where to find the information. And because of that, because I have this wide network, I can sometimes be like, I don't have time to find this thing. I'm going to just ask the person that I know already has that piece, and they just send it to me. And that can be really helpful. And that's why I encourage you, if you do have those questions, if you do need some help, just reach out, hello@empoweringmomsbirth.com. You can also find more of our free resources if you go to our website, empoweringmomsbirth.com. And if you check out our starter guide, that will give you the overview of the entire empowered birth method, about true natural birth versus natural birth perpetuated in the medical system, the mistakes you're making as a first-time mom, a seasoned mom, or a VBAC mom, the success stories of previous empowered moms, especially from the beginning, and also what the empowered birth method is, what it does for you, the philosophy and mission statement if you want to contribute to the empowered birth movement, or you are a birth worker or somebody who serves women in that space who you think you might want to collaborate with me. I'm happy to do that. And finally, I also tell you about those 3 paths and the additional resources. So this is basically a wonderland where you can just keep looking through and skimming, find the headlines that you want. Everything with Empowering Moms, the deeper you go, the more treasure you uncover. Okay, so this is almost like a little adventure. It's a choose your own adventure. How deep do you want to go? Are you just looking for the surface level? Or do you really want to master the empowered birth method? Because you know what? I want you to have this even if you couldn't work with me directly, because I'm going to tell you the story now about how I got tricked. And you can read the whole thing inside of my book, Your Empowered Birth. And you can also read about Jenny's story as well in there. But here's the tale of 2 moms. One mom did not want to go to the hospital. That was me. I wanted to have a home birth because I had recognized that the hospital caused me a lot of anxiety. I didn't want the IV. I didn't want vaginal exams. I didn't want anybody up in my business. I didn't want a whole bunch of strangers in my space. I also recognized that in order to have a more natural and empowering birth experience with less pain, and I didn't have a high pain tolerance, I was thinking in the direction of, oh, I understand about this fear, tension, pain cycle. If I tense up, it's more painful. So if I'm stressed out the whole time and I'm scared, I'm going to feel more pain. And the other one was I wasn't fully aware of just how much pressure the medical system would put on me, but I did know that I kind of crumbled under pressure back then. I was a little bit of a people pleaser. I was afraid of challenging authority, even though in my mind, I was always saying no. But out on the outside, I couldn't say no. So I was thinking to myself, I don't want to be put in a position where I end up agreeing to something I don't want, such as the IV. Or what if birth is more painful than I'm thinking? If I'm in the space with the epidural, I'll give in. And I don't want that. So I knew what my limitations were at the time, and I understood that the hospital wasn't the safest environment for me. Unfortunately, I got tricked and sent to the hospital because they said my baby wasn't growing properly. Again, you can read the whole story inside of my book, Your Empowered Birth. It's in chapter 3, A Harsh Lesson. But long story short is that when I got to the hospital, my labor did several things. First of all, it kind of slowed down so that when they checked me, I was only 4 centimeters, but it was enough to admit me. I also recognized that contractions were a lot more painful in the hospital. It was harder for me to actually concentrate. And something I hadn't anticipated was that even though inside of my birth plan and everything that I'd written out and discussed with my midwife, when she said, part of the protocol is they would want to draw your blood at the beginning for admission. That is part of their routine. And I said, I don't want that. I don't want any needles touching me. I'm not having an IV and I'm not having my blood drawn. And I prefer them to not even do vaginal exams if I can get away with it. So I had put that all in my plan. But here's what happened when I got into the triage room. I'm doing my thing. I'm riding the waves. I'm bouncing on the ball. And all of a sudden, I hear behind the curtain, oh, I'm here for Carly for the blood draw. And I panic. I'm like, wait, what? No, I said I don't want that. Why the hell is this nurse now coming in to do this? And I heard my midwife say, she has declined that. And I thought, oh, good, that's the end of it. I don't have to deal with that. And then the nurse is like, well, I still need to talk to her to get it from her. So then I suddenly hear a voice from behind the curtain. They're not coming in, but the nurse is behind the curtain and she's like, Carly, I'm here to take the blood draw. Can I come in? And I'm like, no, I said I don't want that. I'm not getting that. And she's like, well, it's part of the policy. We really need to have that. And I'm like, well, you already have my blood type on file. And I already did the blood test for anemia and I don't have that. And she's like, that's not what it's for. And I'm like, I don't care. I don't want it. No. And I said no several times, but she kept pushing. Because the thing you need to understand about nurses is that there are some of them that are so focused on that chart, that checklist that they need to have done, that they will not listen to your no. And if they don't listen to your no, that can cause you a lot of stress. This is why you need to have somebody who can advocate for you. And you have to know a strong why to be able to not have a button pushed on you. So this actually ties into Jenny's story too, because a nurse also wanted to take Jenny's blood and Jenny was actively pushing a baby out. And Jenny said, we'll talk about that after I have the baby. And then afterwards, what happened is the nurse was like saying, well, we don't have to do it now. She's like, well, you were so insistent before when I said no. Why? What's changed? The reason they want your blood drawn is because they want to know what your blood type is in case you have a C-section. So recognizing the mentality here, they have already assumed that the blood test is important in case you have a C-section. They have already put that idea into their heads that this is likely to end in a C-section. And if we don't get her consent for this blood test, then we don't have that on file when she has her C-section, and then that's going to be more work for us. Instead of recognizing that actually she's having a physiological birth, there's no real reason to be pestering her right now because she's not going to have a C-section. Let's assume that moms aren't going to have a C-section. But she didn't do that. So she kept pressuring me. And I finally told her in a very unkind way to F off. And she finally left me alone. But recognizing the stress of having to advocate is where a lot of the problems come in. Because what if you didn't know how to say no to something, or you didn't have the education to say no? So this is where we're going into the traps, okay? Because I've now recognized, I'm telling you that you're dealing with the medical system and that pressure. You are now also worried about making noise or dealing with all these distractions, and that can lead to a lot of the stress. We're going to go more into that as we go through the story and as we go through these traps, okay? So part of it is, how does this undermine your confidence? Well, if you have this mentality that you cannot give birth safely without the hospital, this undermines your confidence to give birth. First of all, in the sense that the hospital gatekeeps. They're doing this because they are still running like a business, and they need to know that you're far enough along that you're going to be emptying out of that bed soon. So they need to fill beds and they need to empty beds. It is not actually lucrative and it's not sustainable for them to have a whole bunch of moms in the hospital having physiological births. This is part of the mentality of why they need to do things. So if you're undermined in your confidence of, I don't feel safe outside of the hospital because you haven't worked through those fears, then what happens is that when the hospital says, if you don't do XYZ, we're not going to admit you. They are keeping you from your safe place to birth. The other thing that happens is that maybe you don't actually want to go to the hospital. Maybe you feel like you're pushed into it. Maybe your heart really just calls you home. But for whatever reason, maybe your partner didn't agree. Maybe your midwife won't support it. Maybe you risked out, as I did. You get to the hospital and suddenly those contractions are more painful. Suddenly, you don't really have the same pattern going in your labor that you had earlier. Labor can slow down. It can stall out. It can be more painful. You can have reverse indilation. And when you are feeling not confident to birth in the hospital or not confident to advocate for yourself, this then puts stress and adrenaline into your bloodstream, which counteracts oxytocin and the endorphins that are needed to keep the labor going. Your body cannot tell the difference between you being in a stressful environment in the hospital that you don't actually want to be in versus being out in the middle of the woods or the jungle, and suddenly, as you're going into your labor, a tiger is in the area and you need to be safe in your cave, but you're out in the wilderness. Your body can't tell the difference. But what's happening is the same hormonal process. You left your safe cave of your home and you are now traveling all the way to the hospital. And the hospital has bright lights. That is the enemy of oxytocin. The hospital has a lot of noises and distractions, enemy of oxytocin. And the hospital has a whole bunch of staff that are basically focused on avoiding risks, and all they see is pathology. This again makes you think, I'm not dilating enough. I need to do something. I'm not laboring effectively enough. I need to do something. I'm not coping well. I need to do something. My body is broken. Instead of recognizing it's the environment. One of the pillars of my 5 pillars of empowered birth is the right environment. The hospital might not be right for you. I'm just going to say this. The hospital may not be right for you. In contrast, it was right for Jenny. Jenny was the one who was like, you know what? I would feel safer birthing in a hospital because I want to be able to monitor my blood pressure so that I don't develop preeclampsia again. And I'm like, that is fair and valid. She's like, but I'm going in at the last possible minute. I'm like, oh, absolutely. And then what happened is she had her baby within the hour. And she also was able to have a doula and a partner that supported her and held space and kept that nurse from being able to get that checklist done so that Jenny could have that beautiful hands-off birth experience because she didn't want anybody to touch her. And you can read the whole story inside of your empowered birth. You can also check out one of the interviews that I did with Jenny where she's talking about this. And you can also read her story written in her own words on her website and blog, which is Empress Birthworks, also known as the Birth House Network. And she tells her story and how she was able to have this beautiful empowered birth. So recognizing your confidence is undermined, you think that you can't birth without the hospital. You think that it's not safe. And that leads you to not being able to labor effectively at home, to be able to transfer to the hospital at the last minute, and you go in too early. And then part of this is that the medical system then looks at your labor and they're like, you're not progressing, or you're not coping well, or they say that you're not dilating at the level that they want you to dilate, all of these things. And then they start pushing their interventions on you as well. If there's a policy for every mom to have an IV, guess what they're going to push? If there's a policy on the blood tests, guess what they're going to push? If they want to gatekeep you and say you need a vaginal exam, go check out my other video on how that is a natural birth trap. Then what that does is it again puts that stress onto you. Physiological birth does not follow the typical protocols of the medical system. And the medical system is not set up to facilitate a physiological birth. I will tell you how to turn that around, because I believe that if more hospitals and more staff witnessed physiological birth in that hospital setting, then that would allow more moms to have more options and more choices, and the rates of intervention would go down. So I'm not going to get into the whole cascade of interventions, but typically what happens is that if you're not progressing, they break your waters, they run Pitocin, and then you end up with a C-section, or they push the epidural and you wind up with a vaginal delivery, but you tear even worse than you would have if you had a physiological birth. Or what they do is they basically stress you out, like they did me. And I was pushing for 3 hours on the bed, and the whole time I was afraid that I was going to be cut. And that is where a lot of my trauma actually stems from. It's not what they did to me, it's about the fear of knowing how close I was to actually having my birth completely derailed if I had not stood so strong in my power. But you shouldn't have to fight, beg, or compromise. And the fact is that if you go to the hospital, how this sabotages you and your physiological process is because now you're introducing adrenaline and cortisol into your bloodstream, the bright lights, the distractions, and everything that is basically the antithesis of physiological birth and what you truly need. And then in addition to that, you're also fighting on the outside, trying to advocate for yourself in a system that is deeply, deeply afraid and mistrusting of true natural birth, to the point that after Jenny pushed her baby out and was sitting on the bed and the placenta flew out, the nurse was like, what you've done is dangerous. Like, what you're doing is dangerous. She couldn't hang with the idea of not doing anything. She had never seen a physiological birth. And this is where the disconnect happens in the medical system. If all you see is pathology and you can't see the other side and recognize that the very practices that were said to be safer are actually causing the problems that they are then saying, well, it's a complication that happens, then what happens is that they just keep doing more and more and more interventions, and they don't know how to sit on their hands. So now that you understand about how it undermines your confidence, let's just get into some resources that you are going to want to check out. Now, as I mentioned, Cynthia Gabriel's book, Natural Hospital Birth, is one that I would highly, highly recommend. She has chapters in here on planning a hospital birth and making a birth plan. She also has chapters and sections on how to basically navigate the medical system. One of her tips is wait an hour. If they tell you they want to do something, tell them that you would like an hour. Oftentimes, they forget. And then they don't even remember to ask you again. And you've already bought yourself more time. You also are going to want to have a doula, which is again why information is free and I only charge for access to me. Because if money was tight or you wanted to be able to invest in a doula or childbirth classes and you didn't have money for both, I would much prefer that you put that money into a doula. And if you've also recognized that hospital really isn't for you and it's a backup, then you also want to be able to invest in your true birth location, either a home birth or going and traveling and getting an Airbnb or going for a hotel birth or traveling somewhere else to a better hospital if you still feel you want a hospital birth or a birth center, but you need to be able to invest in your birth and you deserve to do it with all of the information. So, as I said, Natural Hospital Birth, this book, there is just so much in here that if you are looking to plan a hospital birth or just have that as backup, this is the one I would recommend. The other book I would recommend is my absolute favorite, Reclaiming Childbirth as a Rite of Passage by Dr. Rachel Reed. You've probably heard me talk about this book at length. It is one of my absolute favorites because it talks about physiological birth, but it also tells you about how the medical system has these rights of protection, she calls them. And these rights of protection can be helpful if you are not having a physiological birth, if you've introduced medical intervention. However, if you have not introducing a medical intervention, you are no longer having a physiological birth. So this is the blueprint that I would recommend that you check out if you really want to understand what is going on with physiological birth. I do have other videos as well. However, sometimes it's helpful to go to the source so then you can really understand it, because I take the pieces that I know are going to be most relevant for whatever masterclass I'm teaching, or even when I'm doing a challenge or a full workshop, or when I'm coaching a client. But when you go to the source, you have more information. So go to the source. I make sure that every single one of my clients has a copy of this book. And I would even go so far as telling them to pick up Cynthia Gabriel's book as well. Finally, there's one more I would recommend, and it's kind of old, but also still very relevant. And of course, Hensi Goer is also creating her Take Charge of Birth series, where she's going deeper into a lot of interventions and she's bringing in new information. But the Thinking Woman's Guide to a Better Birth is probably the best resource for looking at the risks and benefits of different interventions. Okay, so those are the 3 books I would recommend that you would get in your collection. And I'm also going to mention at this point that hospital birth versus home birth, one of my extra guides that come with your Empowered Birth workshop is actually a guide on the pros and cons of the different birth locations, so that if you're still not sure about hospital birth or home birth, you'll be able to have a more accurate picture of what is right for you. But even if you're planning a home birth, I'm just going to say, make sure you're also understanding how the hospital works so that you can navigate that confidently and advocate for yourself, because you never know. You might end up changing your mind. Something might come up and you might say to yourself, you know, it's probably best if I go to the hospital. I've had clients who have chosen to do that. And because of what I teach with the Empowered Birth method, they're able to navigate that system and confidently advocate for themselves and get their natural birth, or as close to it as they need to get. Because, you know, we aim for true natural birth. We pull back as much as we need, but we don't go and let other people decide what we need. We decide. You are your own best expert, and only you are going to birth this baby and remember this birth experience for the rest of your life. So make it an empowered birth. Whether you end up in a C-section or not, you deserve to have the choice, not have that choice taken away from you. So before we apply the empowered birth method to avoiding the hospital birth trap, let's just quickly recap. So the reason that you need to be planning your birth from a place of power and recognizing the hospital can undermine your confidence is that basically we have lived in a society that tells you that the hospital is safe and home birth is not. Now, if you go and check out my Reset Your Mindset for Empowered Birth mini challenge, you'll start to see where all those old fears and beliefs came from and start to unlearn it. Because there might be a part of you that feels safer at home. And if that is true, then the hospital, you are going to have a difficult time in being able to relax effectively to birth. But if you do choose to go to the hospital, you also need to recognize that the medical system has a checklist and they don't see physiological birth. Mostly they see pathology. So it is very confronting and frightening for them for you to come in and refuse all of the protocols and things that they want to do. So in order to do that, you have to be very well aware that they are going to try to push every single button that they know to try to get you to comply. They're going to ask you multiple times. They may not respect informed consent. So you have to recognize the kind of environment that you're going to be birthing in. And I'm going to be telling you more about that as we get into the empowered birth method. And also, because of the fact that you are a mammal and physiological birth happens without being disturbed, going into the hospital environment with all of those distractions actually blocks oxytocin. There are tips on how to handle that. And again, Cynthia Gabriel talks about them. One of the things that she actually suggested is that you have one of those sleep masks on to cover your eyes so that you're still in the dark. and then also to have headphones on and listening to your music. So then your partner is the one answering the questions and you are in your own zone and blocking out all of those distractions. So that is just some of the things you can do. And again, if you go to the hospital at the last possible minute, then that is also buying you time because you're able to labor mostly on your own. And then when you go to the hospital, you're not taking up a space from somebody else who probably needs it, which doesn't put any stress on the system itself because they're not set up for physiological birth. They're set up to fill beds and empty beds, and their process is very much a conveyor belt. It is a factory level idea. And it actually makes a lot of sense because the hospital was introduced back in the Industrial Revolution. So you need to understand that it was very factory minded. It was a process, and they would get people through that process. And then the baby was the product on the other side. So understanding that, now we apply the empowered birth method, which again, we aim for a true natural birth and we pull back only as much as needed. The first thing you need is to have the right mindset, which means that you need to get past your fears. What if you don't make it to the hospital in time? Well, if you have that fear of giving birth in the car or giving birth at home unassisted, that can hold you back from laboring as long as you need to at home. You go in too early at the hospital, but you're far enough along that they admit you, you fail to progress, they run Pitocin, they break your waters, they say you're still not progressing, they call a C-section. And you need to understand, again, it's because of the fact that they also have you on this clock. And if you're on that clock for too long, they are going to want to speed up that process. You also need to understand that they have their own fears. They don't see physiological birth, they see pathology. So they have been trained to think that this is a problem. Fish can't see the water they swim in. So then their own fear is going to get projected onto you. And you are highly, highly suggestible in labor. So the more you can get rid of that fear before you even go into the hospital, the stronger you can advocate for yourself. The other thing is that you need to believe that you could birth this baby with or without their help. Because if they gatekeep you and tell you, we won't admit you until you agree to the vaginal exam, if you feel you have to be in the hospital to give birth safely, then you may agree to that vaginal exam that then is a birth trap in itself that can cause more problems. And, you don't have to fight, beg, or compromise. You don't have to give up your dignity just to birth safely. So instead of complying with the medical system and playing the game the way they want you to play, you need to be an empowered birth queen and play the game your way, which means disabling those buttons. I do have more videos and support in disabling those buttons. You can check the links inside of this transcript, or what you can do is go and check out the Reset Your Mindset for Empowered Birth mini challenge. And I also have a module on getting past fear inside of your Empowered Birth workshop, which is my complete self-study program. You just put in your name and email and you get the course right away and you can go through it. If you want self-study VIP, well, we can talk about that later when I tell you about the 3 paths, okay? So you get past your fears. You also need to understand your rights to informed consent. And not just the government laws typically, because, sometimes people change those laws and they're not always fair, but your inherent rights as a human being, your sovereign rights, the rights that nobody can really take away from you. If you fully understand those and you have your vision for what you want for your birth, you are more likely to be able to have a successful birth either outside the hospital or in the hospital, depending on what you have now decided is safest for you. You need the right education. You need to know what is going on in that particular hospital that you are thinking of birthing in. Go and check out my other video where I talk about planning a hospital birth or getting your backup hospital for true natural birth, it is in the first part of the Empowered Birth series, the 26 things that you need to know if this is your first time planning a true natural birth. I've linked that inside of the transcript. Go watch that one if you want the deeper dive. So you need to have that education of what's really going on, and you need to understand how physiological birth is affected in the hospital environment. Those two books I mentioned, both Cynthia Gabriel's and Rachel Reed's, are an excellent source for getting that right education. And you also need to have that right environment. Some hospitals are just no good. There is a certain hospital that I birthed at, and that Christine, another friend of mine, birthed at, and that Jenny birthed at, that you could not pay me to go back there. If somebody said, Carly, I will pay you $10 million to go and birth in that hospital, I'd say, you can keep that money. There is no way in hell I will ever set foot back in that hospital. Not the way that it's currently run. And I would have to see major changes before I even recommended my clients go there. In fact, when Jenny recognized just how awful this hospital really was, even though on the outside it looked all glossy and they had these suites with the tubs, she chose a different hospital and drove 20 minutes in labor to go there because she knew that she would not get the kind of birth experience that she wanted at the closer hospital that was like maybe less than 10 minutes away. So you need to know what's going on in that environment. And you need to also ask yourself, do I even feel safe birthing in the hospital at all? Or do I feel safer at home? And if you feel safer at home, there is no shame in that. If you would rather just stay home, even if there's no midwife there to attend you, if you called somebody and said, hey, can you attend my birth at the house because like the baby is coming now, how do they know that it was an unassisted labor? How do they really know if you planned that home birth or not? They don't. And you know, there's so many moms that planned to go to the hospital. Christine was one of them. And what happened is that even though she really wanted a home birth and she thought she couldn't get it, when her waters released and the doula said, let's call the midwife came to the house to assess her. She's like, we have enough time to transfer. And it's actually policy to transfer you. And Christine said, do I have to get on the bed? And the paramedic was like, yes, you need to get on the bed for transport. And she's like, then I'm staying here. And because she was able to understand how things really worked, because she was a rally coordinator and we were talking with the midwives at a deeper level, the midwife was like, okay, my client has declined going to the hospital. I am going to attend her here because the baby is coming and I can't in good conscience leave her. So it was fine. Christine had her home birth after all. So recognizing that you can get the system to come to you and work with you. It's just that they're afraid and it's just that they feel that their hands are tied. But if you have the right education and you know your rights and you know what is possible, then suddenly other options open up. Because honestly, it's going to make them look a lot worse if they don't come to you than if they did. So the problem that I have with the free birth movement is not free birth in itself, because you know what? I would actually free birth, no problem. I love it. But a lot of moms don't actually want that. A lot of moms do want to have that backup support. And because of the way that our birth culture is, they're not able to get it. And there's a lot of midwives that want to be able to support a more holistic hands-off birth, but their hands are tied. So you need to understand that with the right environment, you need to feel safe to give birth. And if the hospital that is closest to you is incredibly toxic with toxic people running it and they abuse everybody, then you don't want to go there. Stay away from that place. Because, if you don't go there, then they shut that down. They have to change or get out of maternity care. And I call these people and places category 5 because all they care about is the bottom line and control. And if you think that you have no options and have to go there, then they can continue to practice the way they have always practiced because nobody can complain. Nobody has any other options. But you do. You have your power, empowered birth queen. You can birth this baby on your own. When you have that right mindset, you can now be like, okay, I'll go in at the last possible minute, but you're not touching me. And then you're able to show them, the ones that are not category 5, a different way. That leads into the right facilitators. You need to have people in your space, the staff, and even a doula who trusts you to be able to birth effectively. Whether you're at home or the hospital, you need to be able to basically do your thing and have people back off. And this is why I also believe that home birth isn't the answer for every mom. Jenny herself wanted to be in the hospital, and she needed to be. She wanted to be monitored. She had real concerns with her chronic high blood pressure. So why can't she go to the hospital and be respected and have people not try to do things to her? Just because you're going into the hospital as backup does not mean that you have to also give in to all of the medical interventions. And one of the things I cannot stand is when labor and delivery nurses and doctors are like, well, if she wants to not have anybody touch her, why is she even going into the hospital in the first place? She should just give birth at home. Well, maybe she feels safer to birth in the hospital. Maybe you could actually support her in her decision and recognize that you have certain skills that can be helpful, but if she doesn't need them, why are you pushing them on her? Why can't you use those for other people who need them more? Why do you have to impose your viewpoint on this mom? And so if you are looking for a care provider, go check out one of my other videos where I talk about finding your right care provider. But you need to have somebody who's not going to interfere, or have a doula as a gatekeeper to protect you from that person. Jenny knew that she couldn't hire the same doula that she had for her first birth, because she needed somebody who was a little bit of a firebrand. She needed somebody who was going to put her hand up and be like, nurse, you are not coming near my client. She has said no, and I will fight for her. I will do what I can to protect her. I will create the right space for her. And so she hired this doula, who is also, her name's Michelle Short. You can go and check out her interviews inside of the interview playlist, or, check the transcript. It's in there. I've linked it. But we knew we needed the firebrand. And Jenny knew that that was the one she was going to hire before she even got pregnant. She's like, I'm going to be getting Michelle. Like, she's the one I want. So you have the right facilitators. You also need the right support. Your partner needs to be such a strong advocate for you. And this ties into another story of a client of mine who decided intuitively she needed to go to the hospital. You can hear more about her story if you go and watch the previous video to this one, where I talked about castor oil. Because my client, names have been changed, Dee Dee, had basically decided that she wanted to have this VBAC after 3 cesareans. She wasn't fully attached to having a completely natural unassisted birth. And I knew that. I knew that she was really having an unassisted birth because she felt backed into a corner by this hospital that had basically said, you can't even have one contraction or you'll have a uterine rupture. They were so afraid of supporting her in a VBAC that they were trying to manipulate her into having a repeat C-section, and she wasn't having it. She was not falling for any of the tricks. And so then at one point, they actually called the house. And then another point, they actually showed up at the house and were knocking on the door, trying to get her to be checked out because they were worried about the baby. She wasn't worried about the baby, but the medical system was worried about the baby. And because of that, they were trying to push their agenda on her, causing her more stress. She was already in labor, but her labor was stalling out because she really didn't feel safe to give birth at home. She wanted to be able to have support. And the contractions were also getting to the point she was exhausted. And so at a certain point in her labor, she's like, I want to go to the hospital. I want to be assessed. But because of what I had taught my clients, and especially training up the partner, he came in as the white knight savior. And he was like brandishing his sword of truth at the medical system, saying, you are not pushing my wife into another C-section. If you do that, you are going to have a fight on your hands. And because they knew their rights and because they understood that they had those rights and could do that, she was able to have her VBAC. So your partner cannot be on the side of the medical system. Your partner needs to be on your side. That means your partner needs to work through their fears and get out of all that programming that the doctor knows best. Because the medical system, if they can't convince you, will convince your partner. And this is how I ended up in a hospital birth when I didn't actually want one and didn't think I needed to be there. Is that during one of the non-stress tests, the chauvinistic OB who seemed to think that he knew everything, and I was a first-time mom who knew nothing, and he had basically said, well, you know, things could happen. You don't know. You're a first-time mom. Something could go wrong. This could go wrong. This could go wrong. This could go wrong. And scared my partner at the time. Because at first, my former partner was on board with home birth because it meant that he'd get to sleep for most of it. He'd get to do his own thing. He wouldn't have to worry about getting clothes on and going to the hospital. We could just do it at home. Easy, right? He was a category 5. With category 5s, you have to look at what their selfish interests are and then pander to that. And again, this is why the empowered birth method is really custom tailored for you. And if you wanted to work with me at a deeper level, I would custom tailor that entire process, find your unique superpowers, your partner's superpowers, the challenges that you're having in the medical system, find their hidden motivations, what's really driving them, and then show you your individual map using my method. But if you're not at that high level and you're doing it yourself or self-study, then you really need to understand those pieces. And that's where the questions come in and the workbooks come in so that you can see the aha moments and be like, oh, that's why I need to do it this way. Okay, where's the strategy for that? And then you pull that strategy and you're like, I got it. So recognizing that I got pushed into the hospital because my partner was suddenly scared. And he's like, you know, this is our first baby. I'm really worried. And they keep saying all these things. And I just feel more comfortable if we were in the hospital just in case. Completely deflating me. Because now I am trying to fight and I've lost the one person that could have kept me sane. This is again why it is so important that you have all 5 of these pillars optimized. Because if you have the right mindset, you're past your fear. If you have the right education, you can reinforce that right mindset. If you have the right environment, then that allows you to get more education and more resources. If you have the right facilitators, they know things, they have skills to help you with your backup plans. And if you have the right support around you, they are reinforcing all of that. If you have one of these pillars missing or not fully optimized, that is when you have those challenges come up. And then your mindset, which is most important for labor, falls apart. That's when you crumble under the pressure. That's when you compromise. That's when you feel like you have to beg for permission. And I don't want that for you. I want you to have your full power as an empowered mom. So that's why I have the 3 paths to empowered birth. Number 1 is the do-it-yourself path, which you are on. If you found value in this video, all I ask is that you like, share, subscribe to this channel, pay this forward, and pass this on. A drop in the ocean creates ripples, many ripples create waves, and enough waves can change the tide. And I am on a mission to make sure that every mom who wants to have a true natural birth gets one, or at least as close to it, and has all of her agency and power in her choices. And I'm also on a mission to ensure that more options are accessible for moms using the proceeds that come in through Empowering Moms Birth and anything else that I'm building within the Empowering Moms label. Because it's not just about birth, it is also about coming to every aspect of your life with this same blueprint. So the do-it-yourself path, just pay it forward. If you want more help with the do-it-yourself path, you can also reach out to my team, hello@empoweringmomsbirth.com, and someone will get back to you within 1 to 2 business days if you're on the newsletter, or 3 to 5 business days if you are not subscribed currently. And all you have to do to subscribe is to either get the Empowered Birth Toolkit, which I give workbooks for you to go through. I do rotate out the resources, but one that stays the same is the Birth Advocacy Report. This is talking about the categories 1 through 5 and how to navigate that properly so that you can fully advocate in the hospital setting and not get pushed into interventions that you don't need, not have your physiological birth undermined and sabotaged, and you stay in your power and confidence the whole time. So going through and getting that report is probably the most powerful thing that you can do. Again, if you check the additional resources that I embed inside the transcript, you can keep following the path. And if you have any questions or want more, you know where to reach us, hello@empoweringmomsbirth.com. Or if you're on the newsletter, just hit reply to any one of our emails. Now, maybe you do like something a little bit more structured. You don't have time to sift through all of the pieces, or you just like to have something a little bit more digestible than going through and sifting through all the information. If that's the case, self-study will probably benefit you even more. This is where I take my biggest ideas and my process, and I put it in an easier to read format so that you can go through step by step. There's questions that you want to ask yourself, journal prompts, exercises, action steps that you want to do, and again, additional resources that you'll want to check out. But all you have to do with these self-study courses, some of them are directly on YouTube or on Instagram in the bite-sized pieces. These are like the Reset Your Mindset for Empowered Birth mini challenge. You go into the playlist, you get your course, you go through it, you do the homework, and then you get the result. If you need more help, you can always reach out, hello@empoweringmomsbirth.com. One of my Empowered Mom ambassadors would be happy to help you. You can also post inside of our Facebook group and ask the question that way. Sometimes you'll get help in there. I can't guarantee, though, that you're going to get the exact help from our Empowered Mom ambassadors. So if you really want that direct support and that direct link for the best information, please reach out to us. If you're part of the Empowered Birth community, you can tag one of our Empowered Mom ambassadors. You can tag me, and we will get back to you. We will help you. If you have things that you really need to work on, and you like to have somebody who walks you through the process, you can also upgrade to Self-Study VIP. This is basically, you have the course, you know what's in it, but you would also like some more direct email support. You'd like us to look at your homework directly, and you'd like us to find those little things that maybe you might be overlooking. You might be missing something, in which case that is the first step to basically having us help you. Information is free. I only charge for access to me. And my Empowered Birth Queens are here to support you and coach you. Many of them have already gone through the Empowered Birth method and had their transformation on the other side. They know what to help you with. Many of them have different stories, different experiences. Jenny herself is an empowered mom for life, and she knows a lot about gestational diabetes and chronic high blood pressure. So if you reached out to Jenny by just putting in through the Empowered Birth newsletter and saying, hey, I need some support, or going through a coaching process, we can redirect you to whichever mom in our network has had that experience. You know what that means, right, Empowered Birth Queen? That means that eventually you could become an empowered mom ambassador. And all it would take would be for you to say, yes, I want to have my success story as part of the Empowered Moms overall success stories and positive birth stories. And if you wanted to be contacted directly, then if somebody came in with a challenge that you have already overcome and you have your own map, then they can reach out to you through our directory. And we're like, you know what? Here, this mom had it. So just think about the transformation that you could create for other moms. Because again, a drop in the ocean creates ripples. Many ripples create waves, and enough waves can change the tide. So when you have an empowered birth, you're an empowered mom for life. No one can take your power away from you again. And the next level within self-study is we also give you one complimentary laser coaching call. This is basically 15 minutes of our time where we have looked over your homework and we're pinpointing on the biggest challenge that you have, that if we could help you solve that, you would be like, I can finally relax and I can have my empowered birth now. Thank you. Because that's what you're really paying for with Self-Study VIP. You're paying for us to help you and custom craft at a level that you can still afford. Because, you know, path number 3 is not accessible to everyone. We are very careful in who we take on inside of our paid workshops, inside of our coaching programs, and inside of our high-level one-to-one coaching sessions. So when you understand this, that I sometimes only take 1 to 2 clients per year, sometimes even less than that. There can be years where it's like, I'm not taking on any clients. I can refer you to one of my coaching queens, but I am personally not taking anybody on. It's a steep price tag to work with me directly. And, you know, I've saved women $30,000 when it comes to avoiding a hospital birth. And that's not even including the fact that they no longer have to worry about birth trauma, the recovery from another C-section. There's really no price tag that I could put on the value and transformation of what I've given to my clients. And because of that, I'm very intentional in my energy and who I'm taking on to give that transformation to. And the same with my Empowered Birth coaching queens who are working with me, who are also wanting to take on those high-level clients and support them. It needs to be aligned. We want to be able to stand for your dream. And in addition to that, you got to do the work. So if you're wanting to work with us at that level, you need to show us that you can actually do the work at the lower levels of do it yourself and self-study. So those are your paths. Remember, all you have to do if you're loving the do it yourself path is like, share, and subscribe to this channel, pay it forward, pass this on, tell other moms about us. And if you do want to take advantage of self-study, there's no barrier. All you have to do is put your name and email in. You get the course, you get extra resources. You can hit reply to any one of those emails and we will support you. You get our Empowered Birth newsletter that also shares the Empowered Mom magic. And ultimately, your birth is your own. Your path is your own. Some go this way, some go that way, but all ways are the queen's way, and you are an empowered birth queen. So thank you so much for watching. Next week, we are going to go into natural birth trap number 8, which is also one of the things that lead to hospital births not always being supportive of physiological birth, eating and drinking. So stay tuned for that. Again, If you found value in this, like, share, subscribe. Whether you are birthing a baby or birthing a creative project, birthing a business, or creating a new version of yourself, Empowered Moms is here for you. And when you have an empowered birth, you are an empowered mom for life. So have a happy, empowered birth journey, and I will see you soon. Namaste.